Welcome, folks. Welcome, welcome, welcome. How's everybody doing? Maybe give me a thumbs up, a little wave. Hey, Lisa, how are ya?
Very good. Happy to be here.
Right on. Good to have you. Hey, I'm just going to quickly share my screen here. If somebody in the chat box might be able to let me know that they're able to see my screen, that would be epic. And then I'm going to go ahead and pop it into presenter mode. Okay, and then let me just hop over to the chat. All right. I can see a couple of people are saying that, yep, they're able to see. Perfect. I can see at least one individual having a beer in the screen, so that's perfect. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and flip to the next screen here, which is just a couple of housekeeping items. For those of you that have been on one of the happy hours before, you can probably see I got a new outfit here, new wardrobe. So this is a happy hour. Go ahead, grab yourself a drink, a snack, something to kind of settle into the evening here, be it a wine, a beer, coffee, tea, mocktail, cocktail, anything in between. Go ahead and get comfortable. Once you've got that, then go ahead and sit somewhere else to where you work over the course of the day. So if we're sitting where we work, then we're going to be in kind of work mode still. And we want to check out of that and check into happy hour mode. And then the third piece is over the course of our happy hour here, I want everybody sending their questions through into the chat function. So just to make sure that that is working, I'd love for a couple people or anybody to type into there, where are you dialing in from today? Where are you joining us from today? And as you do that, I'm going to admit a couple more people and we'll get started about 5-6 minutes after the hour. Awesome, Squamish folks. Langley, perfect. Denver, all right. Lynn Valley, Bracky. We've got somebody's name is economics coordinator and another person is owner. So I think that I might just be the student on this one and somebody's gonna hijack the meeting halfway through. Oh, hey, Bobby. Right on. Cool. Well, we're going to give it a couple minutes here just to let a couple more folks join us. I think we had about 106, 107 RSVPs. There's already more than 40 folks in the room here, which is about kind of the normal 50%. So yeah, we'll give it a couple minutes, settle in, and then we'll get started in just a few.
On. My audio's on. Start video, chat, share screen. He disabled.
Hi, everyone from Squamish.
Hey, Jill.
How's it going?
Good, good, good.
You're in my work studio, so I have to be in work. I can't move this. This is a giant computer.
Nice. Perfect. Just give it a couple more minutes here to let a couple more folks join.
It's okay because this is not work mode.
There we go.
Hey,
Joe. That's what we're talking about.
Hey, how's it going? How you doing?
I'm good. How are you? Long time no see.
Yeah, Laura, you're looking good.
Long time no see anybody.
Yeah, no kidding. Oh, well, whatever.
And Jordan, it was nice to meet you in person.
Yeah. Glad we were able to get the soil over to you.
Yeah.
Now we'll go through how to put it to use.
I did round 1 last weekend.
All right, there we go.
Are you already on your soil?
I am.
Oh my gosh.
Indoor seeds.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm about to start, but I'm sort of iffy. I want to make sure I got a lot of seeds this year, so I want to make sure they do well.
That's why we're here.
All righty, yeah. So I think
4
we'll go
yards.
ahead and start diving into our session here. It's probably likely that a couple more people will join over the course of the next few minutes. So if you see my eyes darting to the side of my computer, that would be why. But for those of you that joined us just over the last couple of minutes as we've been settling in and chatting, first things first, you can see I've got a new shirt on here. This is a happy hour, so I can't see all the videos right now, but hold up your glass if you have one there. Give a quick little cheers. If you don't have a drink, go ahead and grab one real quick, be it a beer, wine, coffee, tea, mocktail, cocktail, water, anything in between. Grab yourself a snack. Really want this to be a fun, relaxing hour. So if possible as well, sit somewhere else to where you work over the course of the week. If we're remaining where we are working, then the brain kind of stays in work mode. But if we start moving somewhere else, then we start to go into relaxation mode a bit more. And the third piece is that as we go through the happy hour today, any questions that you have, go ahead and pop those into the chat function, and I'll be going over there answering those as we go. And then at the end of the session, I'm happy to stay on the call until 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10 p.m., 2 a.m., doesn't matter to me, to get all of those questions answered for you. I'll probably have to join you guys at some point in the happy hour once we get to that point. But just to make sure that the chat function is working for everybody, would love for you all to go ahead and type in there, what is one of the seeds that you're excited to start this coming season? Basil, nice. Peppers, love it. I just checked my peppers and it's already up to, I think 27 of them have germinated. So we are off to the races there. Cabbage, squash, peppers, onions, carrots. Love it. Cool. Well, looks to me like the chat function is working. So let's start diving in here, folks. For those of you that I have not met before, my name is Jordan. I'm the founder here at Mind and Soil. We're a gardening business based out of Squamish, BC, and we approach things a little bit differently than all the other, kind of gardening companies out there, in that we are solely focused on introducing new gardeners and existing gardeners to the mental health benefits that come from gardening. So any of the existing gardeners that are in the room here today, it's probably a big part of why you still get your hands dirty and keep on coming back to gardening, how good you feel afterwards. And for those that are potentially a little bit newer to gardening, it can be a little bit scary, a little bit daunting, a little bit overwhelming. Where do I get started? How do I start my seeds? Do I need a grow light? All these questions. And a huge role of Mind and Soil is around education and learning, to flatten that learning curve so that you can be tapping into those mental health benefits as quickly as possible. So if you have any questions afterwards and throughout the gardening season, send those through to me on Instagram at Mind and Soil, or even just by email, jordan@mindandsoil.com. Okay. And so today we're of course talking about starting seeds, and I'd love to hear from everybody how you guys are feeling. So how are you feeling about starting your seeds for the season? Go ahead and give me a little insight here on the chat box. Is it excitement? Everybody's over the moon? Is it overwhelmed? Is it I'm stressed, I'm anxious, I don't know where to get started? Let's hear. Okay, Nithya's fired up. I know Nithya got her Mind and Soil seedling mix all the way out in Toronto just this past week, so I'm thrilled about that. Okay, excited, nervous, overwhelmed. Okay. Trepidation. I'm not going to be saying any big words like that by the end of this happy hour. Nervous, excited, unsure. When do I start? Frustrated. Yeah. So I think that this is like a very common place for us to be feeling when it comes to starting our seeds. There's so much excitement for the season ahead, but oh, please God, please let my seedlings germinate and turn into big and beautiful plants. And for any of you that are feeling a little bit overwhelmed or a little bit anxious, I want to share with you the absolute best part of starting from seed. So let's say that we go ahead and we start from seed here over the course of March. And let's say that we start some tomato seeds, some kale seeds, and a couple other things. And for whatever reason, when we get to May, when it's time to move our little plant babies into the gardens, let's say that they didn't germinate, or that maybe a cat or a dog got into them, knocked them over, ripped them up. For whatever reason, we don't have any seedlings to move into our garden bed. And it's like, oh my gosh, the world is coming to an end. But starting from seeds is almost like gardening on borrowed time, because if we get to May and something went wrong with all of our seedlings, or even one or two of them, and we're a little bit short in a couple areas, we just pop over to the garden center, the nursery, and we fill out the rest of the mix, and we've got all the seedlings that we still need. So even if everything were to go completely sideways, there is zero risk, because we don't miss any of the gardening season whatsoever. But if we follow the method that I'm going to walk you through today, I guarantee that each and every one of you will have seedlings to be moving into your garden beds. And for those of you that have started from seeds before, I'm sure you can all kind of attest to the feeling when you see your little plant babies poking through for the very first time through the top layer of soil there. I don't have any kids or have been through that process, but I can only hope and imagine that it feels as wonderful as a seedling poking through here for the first time and seeing the world for the very first time. And before you know it, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks later, it's going to be looking like this. And this is what it can look like for each and every one of you. And this isn't just like a picture that I pulled, off the internet or from garden seasonings of past. This is right now. And so all of those little babies are right in this tray here. And this is using the exact materials that we're going to be going through today and the exact method that we're going through today. So to start diving into that, I want to break it down into two areas. We're first going to talk through the materials that are needed to start seeds, and then we're going to talk through the method to go about putting those materials to use. As we start diving in here, fire any questions that you have into the chat box. And then as we kind of finish off on materials, we'll pause for a couple minutes, answer a whole bunch of questions, and then we'll go ahead and dive into the method side. Okay? So starting with materials, what do we need to begin starting our seeds? So the first piece is, of course, we need seeds. This one is fairly self-explanatory. You can buy them at a garden center. You can buy them at Home Depot. You can buy them online. I saw a kind of a comment that just came through about, I'm worried that my seeds won't arrive in time. And if there is a lot of worry there, if they're way behind, just go ahead and pop over to one of your local hardware stores or something like that. And they all have seed racks set up right now. For myself, everything that I go with, I use West Coast Seeds. They are completely untreated from their end. So there's no synthetic chemicals, no pesticides, no fungicides, anything like that. So all the seeds that I end up starting are from them. But if you didn't join our garden planning happy hour a few weeks ago, what's even more important than where you get your seeds is what seeds you decide to start. So ultimately, grow vegetables that you want to eat and that you love eating. And so before just kind of racing off to the store or online, spend a couple minutes reflecting and thinking through, what is it that I love to eat? Jot those vegetables down and use that as your starting point for determining which seeds you want to go with. Okay, so we have our seeds. What do we put our seeds in? We need a seedling mix. Now you can of course go to the store and buy a potting mix of some sort. This is the kind of one area where I am extremely biased because we have our worm casting seedling mix here at Mind and Soil. And the reason why I'm kind of like so bullish on it is because it's got all the organic matter, all the nutrients, all the microbes, bacteria, and enzymes that plants need in those first 2 months before moving them into the garden beds. So rather than having to pot them up into something larger, rather than having to add in a whole bunch of amendments, it's already pre-mixed with everything that you need in there for those first few months. And so you just pop them into it and you're basically off to the races. If you were to go down the path of using a store-bought seedling mix, then you're just going to have to add 1 or 2 steps in there, either potting up into a, kind of like more of a soil, or building your own blend at some point in there. So just a couple extra steps that you'd have to be going through in order to ensure your plants are getting all the nutrients and biology that they need to be strong, healthy, and ultimately tasting really, really good. Okay, so we've got our seeds and we've got seedling mix that they're going into. What's the container that we put them in? Okay, so the third material that we need are seed cells. And now for myself, I really like these 3.5-inch seedling cells. So this is the size of them right here. 18 of these fit into a 10 by 20 tray. And the reason why I like this size so much is because there's enough room in there for the roots to grow and do their thing. And I don't really have to pot them up until I move them into the garden beds in kind of early mid, or even a little bit later in May, depending on how the weather's looking. So again, it's just trying to simplify things and save a step. You could absolutely start in those like really tiny little seedling cells that are like 1 inch by 1 inch. It just means that like 3 weeks in, you'd have to be moving them up into something of this size. So for myself, I'm trying to make it as simple and easy as possible. If you use 3.5-inch cells, once you've got your seeds and your seedling mix in there, we're basically just letting them do their thing until we get to moving them out into the garden beds. Okay, now the fourth piece is the most important material for starting seeds at this time of the year. And that fourth material is a grow light. I would love to sit here and say that you got to buy Mind and Soil seedling mix, but if there's one thing that like you have to buy, it would absolutely, I'd put at the top of the list, your grow light. And there are like a gazillion different options under the sun when it comes to which grow lights to go with. I'm not sure if you can see that, all that light emitting from behind that curtain there. I've got about 6 different grow lights in there that I've been playing around with, testing out, all that type of stuff. And I have zero connection relationship to any grow light company out there. So my recommendation here is purely based on what I use to grow with. And there's 2 that I really, really like. So I really like the Sunblaster T5 fluorescent, or even their LED line. Anything by Sunblaster, big thumbs up. And then I also have really liked the Moneos LED. The reason why I like Sunblaster, for those of us that are in BC, they're based out of BC over in Langley. So you are supporting, kind of a local business on that front. The only reason why I would go for Moneos instead of Sunblaster is because they come with this kind of like connecting cords that you can extend up and down. And it just makes it super, super easy. Everything's there, almost as like a little bit of like a grow light kit to get started. With the Sunblaster, it doesn't have that kind of like kit of cords, so you just need to build something. I've got like fishing line and a couple of hooks tied into a couple of little screws on the top of my structure over there. And so yeah, it is one extra little step. If you want to, again, simplify things, then the Moneos one has it built right in there. And I've been, a big fan of those. And the important part here is you don't need to spend a lot of money on a grow light. Both of these options are less than $50. So don't go spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Either of these options, they're gonna last you super long time, and they are like extremely, extremely strong lights. So be everything that you need with those ones. And I will be sending through links to those afterwards tomorrow morning so that you can purchase them if you would like. Okay. On to the fifth area. So we've got everything now, but where do we put our seeds? They need to be somewhere warm. So we need a thermometer to be able to determine where is a suitable environment for them. I did a test on this over the course of the last few months. I started the exact same seeds under the exact same lights with the exact same soil, receiving the exact same amount of water. The only difference being temperature. And I started one group at 50 Fahrenheit, another at 60, another at 70, and another at 80. And if it is below 70 Fahrenheit, about 21 Celsius, the germination rate goes way, way, way off a cliff. So when you're getting ready to start your seeds, we need to find somewhere in the house that is going to consistently be above 70 Fahrenheit. That's going to make our lives so much easier. So that's the thermometer. One more, then we're gonna pause for some questions here. So the sixth piece is a spray bottle. We need a nice and moist and damp environment for our seedlings and our little seeds to germinate, but we don't want it to be completely soaking wet. So I find that using a spray bottle early on, it gets a really gentle mist into the seedling mix. And so I generally go with about kind of like 30 to 50 sprays of water, and it just gently sits and kind of like soaks through it. And when we think about those seedlings, when they start to germinate and turn into really tiny little baby seedlings, that's when they're most fragile. So we don't want to be disturbing the root system. If you didn't want to use a spray bottle, another like kind of weapon of choice of mine is a turkey baster, and that also works extremely well. Okay, so those are the 6 must-haves from my end here. I'm going to touch on 3 nice to haves because I've already seen one question come through on those, and then we'll get to a bunch of the questions here. Okay, so there's also a couple kind of nice to haves that I don't think you absolutely need, but if you've got them laying around, then we could put them to use. And that is an oscillating fan, heating mat, and a kind of humidity dome. So if you have a fan laying around, this is really great because it's going to be blowing the little seedlings just as the wind would. And this is going to make the kind of like the stalk of the plant a little bit stronger, and the root system is going to set into the seedling mix a little bit more. So if you have one around, perfect. If you want to spend an extra kind of like 20, 25 bucks, great. Absolutely would recommend doing it. But if you're kind of like wanting to do this with kind of as few steps and as few items as possible, it's not necessary. The heating mat, if you have that room or an environment that is going to at least be 70 Fahrenheit on a consistent basis, you don't need a heating mat. It's not necessary by any stretch. However, if you are living somewhere and it's like kind of in the 60s or it's not consistently being above 70, then I would move the heating mat into a must-have. So it needs to be at least 70 Fahrenheit for you to have a high likelihood of success with starting seeds. And in that instance, we would spend the $25 to $30 to buy a heating mat. The third item is that kind of like humidity dome, which basically, just keeps it a little bit more humid in that area, keeps the soil a little bit more moist. These are definitely good and definitely helpful. The challenge that I've had with them is that they're usually only about like 2 inches tall. And so after about, like 7, 8, 9 days, your first seedlings could be hitting the top of it while other things still haven't germinated. And so then you have to take it off anyways because you start impeding the seedlings that are growing, and then it's not helping the seedlings that haven't germinated yet. So if you are going to use a humidity dome, definitely get one that's at least kind of like 6 or 7 inches tall so you can leave it on there for a good 2-3 weeks without inhibiting any of the seedlings that are starting to germinate. Okay, I'm going to pause for a moment here, and I'm going to hop over to the chat box and start firing through any questions that you have. I'm going to kind of scroll back up through it because I can see a bunch that have come through here already as well. Okay, Jessica asked there, what soil do I use? I think that I touched on that. Again, it is important once you kind of get into week 2, week 3, that there are some nutrients in there for the seedlings to be tapping into. So if you're using just a store-bought potting mix, you would need to pot them up about 3 weeks to a month in. With the Mind and Soil worm casting seedling mix, it's got all the nutrients, all the microbes in there. So you just put them in there and they're good until we would be moving them into the garden beds come kind of May or so. Okay. Getting through. Rivka asked, where can we buy your Mind and Soil? On our website, www.mindandsoil.com. And there'll be links to it afterwards, so you'll be able to go to it. Christy, she bought this one on Amazon. It's super easy to put together and lightweight. I think, Christy bought the Monios LED. Like I said, if you want like the easiest grow light to put together that's going to give you great results, I think Monios is the way to go. If you want to support the local business, add one step to your process because you have to build your hanging system, then go Sunblaster. Okay, question from Alicia. Does putting your plants by the window work to get light? So like, I'd say that this question depends a little bit, because if you have like a big, beautiful south facing window without any obstruction, then maybe you'll get enough light. But I would say the majority, like 80 to 90% of the time, you're not going to get enough light without a grow light. And so I would make that kind of like $40 to $50 investment in getting a grow light, because then you're going to have really, really nice and strong plants. If you notice that your seedlings, as they start to grow, are like really, really long and thin, that means that they're leggy. And what they're doing is they're growing tall because they're trying to reach more light. And they'll probably fall over pretty quickly. And that's just a sign that they are not getting enough light, and you would need to be increasing the amount of light that they're receiving, probably through a grow light. Okay, Laura asked a question there about heat mats. As I mentioned, if it does not get to 70 Fahrenheit, then yes, a heat mat is necessary. You're going to want to keep a closer eye on your moisture levels, because with a heating mat, it is direct heat opposed to ambient heat. And so that means that the soil is probably going to actually end up, closer to 80 to 85 Fahrenheit. It's going to dry up a little bit quicker, opposed to if it's just in a room where the ambient temperature around it is 75, 72, 78 in there. Okay, question from Laura. Do you continue to use the heating mat after they have sprouted? So I personally, if I was using a heating mat, and so let's kind of build out this scenario here. I live somewhere and the room is like 60 to 68 Fahrenheit. So I'm going to use a heating mat to help my seeds germinate. After about 3 weeks or so, I would probably stop using that heating mat, because when we then move them into the soil, into the garden beds, like if the house isn't 65, then I'm pretty sure it's outside going to be even colder than 65 Fahrenheit. And so that would just make it a harder transition for them if they're going from being used to like 80 Fahrenheit soil to now into garden beds where it's getting, less than 60 Fahrenheit at night. Okay, question from Natasha. Is grow light essential? Can you do this without one? Natasha, I would, from all of my experience, I would put a grow light as essential. It is going to make your life so much easier. You're going to be so much happier with how your seedlings are developing. They're going to be nice and strong and stocky. I'd put it as absolutely essential on this piece. Christy, won't the fan cool off the area? That would depend on what the ambient temperature is and the air that it's moving through there. Okay. And then also on the fan note, you wouldn't need to start using the fan until kind of like 3 or 4 weeks in, once you actually have seedlings, because the purpose of the fan is to blow the seedlings, opposed to doing anything during the germination process. Okay, question from Sarah. Can you talk about using soil blocks? So to answer this question, I think that soil blocks are kind of like all the rage at the moment. Basically what you're doing is you're building a kind of a blend very similar to like the worm castings seedling mix here at Mind and Soil. And you're then getting it nice and wet, and you're basically letting the plants start growing in there. I haven't done that at all. For me, it feels like a lot of extra steps, and then I'm really scared that they're going to start crumbling. But also I've had some experiences in the past where I have wetted the mix before putting it into the seedling cells, and that made it really, really, really compact, and the roots had a much more difficult time growing. So for me, the verdict is very much out on soil blocks. I would have to be very hard convinced to start doing that, because I'm having so much success with this very simple way of going about it. And yeah, it isn't something that I have explored into at this point yet. Okay, from Bobby, yeah, that's what happened to her kale last year. I'm guessing that was in terms of it getting leggy. Great. Question from Jill, how long should it take for tomatoes to sprout? Give or take a few days. I'd say give it up to 7 days, and then if you don't have anything after 7 days, then it'd kind of start asking some questions there. Okay. Okay, question from Barb, wondering about process and timing of moving cold tolerant seedlings out earlier under poly tunnels. Yeah, absolutely would be something that you could do. I kind of keep an eye on like May long weekend or May 15th in there as my target date. And I'm here in BC for when I move things into like seedlings into their forever home. Now you could, if you had an eye on the forecast and you saw that it's going to be really nice, beginning early May for kind of like 7 to 10 days, then you absolutely could start a little bit earlier. And then, yeah, you could use wool, you could use some kind of poly over top to help create more of like a greenhouse type of environment. For myself, I have like a little kind of like 4 foot by 2 foot structure with polyurethane plastic around it. And usually when I move the seedlings outside in April to start hardening them off, I put them under that at first because there's a little bit less wind, no critters getting to them, and it's going to be a little bit warmer. And as we get towards April, I'm going to be doing a whole happy hour on hardening off seedlings to be able to move them into their forever homes outside. So we don't need to stress about that too much just yet. And I will be doing a lot of education on that front as well. Okay, can you reuse your cells? I reuse all of mine. I've been using the same ones for a couple of years now. And yeah, I don't even like, I think there's a whole school of thought around like you have to sanitize them afterwards. I've never sanitized a single one of my seedling cells, and I've never had any issues with any pests or bugs or anything like that in the seedling mix early on as they're getting started. So that side is all good. There is the option of using those peat moss seedling cells, and I would recommend to not use those. The reason being is because the amount of time that it will take for that peat moss to break down is a lot longer than when the plant's root system is wanting to grow out from there. So if you put them into these peat moss little cells and you plant the whole thing into your garden beds, the roots are going to remain bound in that peat moss cell because it hasn't broken down sufficiently yet. So I'd recommend using something like a plastic one here. These ones are from recycled plastics, and then just pop them out into the beds and then reuse the same 18 3.5-inch seed cells for your fall harvest that you could be doing from a succession perspective or for the following season. From Anne Marie, can I use a daylight fluorescent at 6,500 kelvins, even if not specifically defined as a grow light? So I haven't done any specific tests on this. The theory kind of checks out. It makes sense. Like if you were to use like a T8 or a T12, the grow lights that are kind of like deemed as a grow light are T5s. So it's a little bit different, and it's just like a little bit more focused, the light. So I don't think you'd have as good of results with a T8 or a T12, even if it still is at 6,500 kelvins. My recommendation there, again, because I think the light is so critical, so important, would be just to make that quick and easy investment into a less than $50 grow light. Question from Jessica. On Amazon, I see pink fluorescent bulbs. Are they any different? This is the type of grow light that I use to start with. There's like a million of them on Amazon. In general, they don't give up enough light. So Jessica, I would focus on those two that I shared there a little bit earlier. Those fluorescent ones I've got, and I'm doing a test on them right now. And the seedlings that I have underneath those grow lights are having a really, really tough time. Okay. So there's a couple more questions there. Where do you buy your seed cells? They're available to buy on mindandsoil.com. So I use the ones that we sell. And so Lidkin, if you did want those, send me an email at jordan@mindandsoil.com and we can get that sorted out for you, or you can just purchase online. And then from Haley, do you succession plant your indoor seeds or just start sowing as the weather warms up? Great question, Haley. As we get towards let's say mid-June, I would have an eye on the temperature. Last year, I started things outside and then moved them into the garden beds about a month later, and that was all good. You just want to keep an eye on it and make sure that, again, there's no really big cold spikes that are coming up in the next little bit. Okay, amazing questions from folks. Has this been helpful so far, talking about some of the materials that we're going to need? center here. Okay, super helpful. Heck yeah, right on. 200%, that's what we're talking about. Okay, let's start diving into the second part. So we've now got all of our materials. What is the method to the madness here? How do we get them germinating? The method that I'm about to walk you through, I've been getting anywhere from like 80 to 90+% germination of the seeds that I'm starting growing into beautiful little plant babies. So again, it's working super, super well for me, and it's only going to be utilizing the materials that we just went through here. And we're going to do this just as we did with the materials. I'm going to kind of blast through it, and then we'll open it up for questions. Today's happy hour, it is only the 2 sections. So after that, it's kind of just a free for all, questions for as long as we need. So we'll dive in here, and then keep on to start firing questions through as we get into it. So the first thing that we need to do is put our seedling mix into our little seed cells here. So I've got a little video of me going, and this is very straightforward. We just scoop it in. Okay, there's the second one, and there's 3 of them. And what we're doing here is we're basically just grabbing the seedling mix. It's already got everything in it that it needs. And we're filling it to about 1 centimeter from the top. So not completely to the very top, just leaving a little bit of space. Now, the next thing that we need to do is we need to tamp them down to compact the seedling mix a little bit. So I'm going to show you a little video of me doing that now. And what you can see that I do is I actually grab one, because the bottom is basically measured to the top of the next one. They all stack. And then you just pop it on top, push it down a little bit, and you've then tamped down your soil and compacted it enough. This is like a little bit frightening to do the first time, because it's like, oh my gosh, I want the soil to be so nice and loose so the roots grow so easily through it. But we actually do want to tamp it down just a bit, because that's going to allow the roots to grow throughout it in like a stronger manner. And then there's going to be more structure around the stem as it begins to shoot through to the surface. It's not going to be kind of pushing around every which direction. Now, the amount of pressure that you should be applying, I was trying to kind of think through, how much pressure do you apply to it? And the best example that I could think of is, I'm not sure if anybody recalls like those, the red buttons from Staple, the "that was easy" button. But basically all that you want to do is like tamp it down and go like, that was easy. That was easy. Like the same amount of pressure that you would be. I saw one person just spit up their drink laughing at that. So that is great. And that's what you should be doing as you're starting your seeds. Just boom, that was easy. Move it over. That was easy. All good. And that's how you should be feeling throughout it all. So that's about the level of pressure that we're putting towards it. Not trying to cram it down super, super hard, just a little bit of force. So we've got our seedling mix nicely tamped down and compact. And like we said, we need a moist environment for our seeds to germinate. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to grab our spray bottle, and we're going to give it about 50 sprays to each of the little seed cells. So you can see a grab there, and then very straightforward, just spraying each one of them. And again, the number of sprays that I would be going with is around 50 sprays, 1 or 2 for yourself as well there. Okay, so now that soil is starting to get a little bit moist. But again, we don't want like endless amounts of water in there, which is why I like to use the spray bottle. It keeps it a little bit more controlled, and we're going to do it in a couple of waves here. Okay, so step 1 is done. We've got kind of like our base layer in there. Next thing that we need to do is we need to put our seeds into the seedling mix. I like to put 5 seeds into each of the cells that we're going for. Okay, so I put my 5 in there. This is what it would look like if we were to look straight down at it. I like to kind of space them out evenly throughout, and then I'd pop a 5th one right into the middle. And the reason why we're doing more than one seed into each of the cells is because there's going to be some seeds that, like, even if we gave them the best conditions, they're just not going to germinate. So if we have 5 seeds that are in there, we only need 20% to give us the plant that we're looking for to have and to move into our garden beds. What's likely to happen, though, is that you end up like this, where you have 1, 2, 3, 4 kale plants that have come through, and then you get kind of your choice or your pick of the litter as to which one you want to keep, and the other 3 you would just nip, and then they would the root system would die off, and the one that you've selected would continue to grow big and strong. Okay, so we've got our seeds in there, but we need to now get them a little bit moist as well. So we're going to now do our next round of 50 sprays. And I can see just a question came through from Rivka there. Do we need to soak our seeds a day or 2 before them? And my answer on that is that it's not 100% necessary. So again, I'm trying to think through, like, what is the simplest approach here? And if I'm getting 80 to 100% of my seeds germinating without putting them, into a wet cloth or something along those lines, then I'm just going to start them that way to save myself that step. So you could do it, absolutely. I don't want you to think that this is kind of like the be all end all, you have to do it this way, but rather this way is getting kind of 80% or higher germination rates. Question from Chrissy, you said nip them off. Do you mean cut or pull them out? I do both of those, kind of depending on the size of the plant and how long I've let it grow for. So if they're a little bigger, then I'll cut it to not disrupt all the soil. If they're little tiny guys though, then I'll just pop them out with my hands. Okay, so we did our 50 squirts of water onto the cell, into the seeds that are in our seed cells. And that is getting the seeds wet, but it's also all that moisture is going into the seedling mix right below it. So again, we're promoting that kind of like damp and moist environment that the seeds need to germinate. So now we need to top them off and put a little bit more seedling mix over top so that it's nice and compact on top of them and creating moisture on the top and below it. So all that we do is grab a couple scoops of our seedling mix, and now we're filling it to the top of that seedling cell. And once we have put the seedling mix in there, then all we have to do is tamp these down. So again, we want it to be compact below the seeds and compact above the seeds, so that as the stalk begins to shoot through, it's coming through and it's not getting just moved around all over the place. Okay, so those are getting them tamped down there. All right, and the next piece is to then get our last round of 50 sprays here. And so remember, we did 50 sprays into the seedling mix to get it moist. We did 50 sprays onto the seeds to get them moist. And now the section above the seeds, we have not yet made moist. This is why we're putting the water, the last 50 sprays on there. It's going to work its way through that top layer of seedling mix. It's going to get the seeds a little bit more moist, as well as the seedling mix down below. Okay, so at this point, we've basically done everything that we need to in order to start our seeds. Fairly straightforward. I would love to hear just kind of in the chat box from folks before we start talking about where we place them, if indeed like that was easy. So if this is making sense, if this is looking digestible, not overwhelming, go ahead and type in that was easy. And let's see if this is hitting the mark for anyone here. Perfect. That was easy. All right. Perfect. Lisa, you absolutely can do it. All right. Yeah, Laura. Yeah, definitely a good workout for the hand there. It's been good climbing rehab for me. Perfect. All right. Good to hear that this is resonating with folks. So our seeds are kind of in their temporary home, like their apartment, before we move them into their forever home. Now we need to find where throughout the house we're going to let them sit for the next kind of month to 2 months. Okay, so what we need to do is grab that thermometer and begin kind of just walking throughout the house, the apartment, to find an area that is 70 Fahrenheit and that's not going to get like trampled over or anything along those lines. So with like a thermometer, like I buy mine from a dollar store. You can go ahead and just like set this down for like 10 to 15 minutes and you'll get a feel for the temperature in that area. Once you've found a spot that is 70 Fahrenheit and it's not going to have, like people trampling over it or animals, etc., then you're all good on that front. You're going to take your seedlings and you're going to now move them over to this area. And that's where you'd be setting up your grow light. So you can see here, I found my area that is 70 Fahrenheit and I'm placing them there. The grow light is about like 6 to 10 inches above that. With those ones that I've recommended, that's going to be kind of a perfect amount of height for them to still be getting enough light to grow and not get leggy. And this is where we basically just let them sit and rest and begin to do their thing. So we don't need to overcomplicate it, make it more difficult, anything like that. It's just finding them a place where they're able to hang out and start getting light on them. In terms of the number of hours of light, I like to do about 12 to 14 hours. So I've got a timer that I bought from like Home Depot and put into the wall. So the grow lights over there, they turn on at 7:30 in the morning and they turn off at 8:30. So depending on how late we go, you might notice that it gets a little bit darker over there around that time when they shut off. And that just runs all on its own. And this is where they're gonna now be sitting and just hanging out. The only other thing that we're doing from now until when we start to harden them off is just monitoring our moisture level. And there's two ways that we're going to go about doing this. One is by touching the top of the surface, and the other option is just by observing it. So if you were to put your kind of the back of your hand or the back of your fingers on the top of your seedling mix, and then you feel it, and if there's any moisture on there, then you're still pretty good for right now. If you touch the top and it's like feeling really dry, then you'll go ahead and you'll give it kind of a 30 to 50 sprays. The other option is if you just look at it, and if the color of the seedling mix is changing from like a dark chocolate to a milk chocolate, a lighter brown, then that's a sign that it's drying out and we need to get the next round of 50 sprays on there. Generally, this is 2 to 3 days. So kind of have that in the back of your head that, okay, it's going to be about every 2 to 3 days that I need to apply my next 50 sprays. And as you, as you go about that, you're going to just, kind of head over top of them and give them those 50 sprays there. The reason why it would be like not definitively, every 2 days or definitively every 3 days that you water them is because if you are using a heating mat as an example, then the soil is going to dry up a little bit faster. If the ambient temperature is 78 opposed to 71, that's going to change the temperature as well. If you have a fan going, that's going to dry out the soil a little bit more quickly as well. So this is where, you are starting to put on your gardener hat and keeping a bit of a feel for, how moist is it in there. And again, by using the spray bottle, we're not running that risk of it getting too moist in there. So the last piece that's going to kind of tie all of this together is in your inboxes tomorrow morning, you're going to get a seed starting tracker from me. So I'm going to email this through to you as well as the whole recording so that you can kind of go back to any points. And in here, you've got your materials on the top. And so you're going to just check to make sure that you got all of those. And then all that you have to do is write in there the vegetable that you're starting, your start date, and then the temperature to make sure that that's all good. And then on day 0, when you start, you're doing 50 sprays. Day 3-ish, another 50 sprays. Day 6, 3 days later, another 50 sprays. And then on day 7, let's start getting a feel for how many little seedlings have shot through and come through the surface there. And then you're just going to be able to keep on tracking through this and starting to collect a little bit of data and information, but also make sure that you're getting the moisture in there and staying on a little bit of a plan. And if you do this, if you use those materials, and if you follow this method of getting the water and the moisture in there kind of every 2 to 3 days, then I do guarantee that each and every one of you we'll then end up having that beautiful moment where the seed babies start shooting through for the very first time. And what you can see here is there's this first seed, the second seed, third, fourth, and fifth, all 5 that I put into that cell germinating. I now have my pick of the litter, which one I want to go with. And then a couple weeks later, it's starting to look more like this. They're coming to life. They're growing nice and big. And then by the time you get to kind of like 6 weeks in or so, you're looking like this. You got a little bit of a jungle going on, a whole bunch of beautiful seed babies getting ready, big and strong to move out into the crazy wild world out there. They grow up so fast before we have to move them outside. But I've got every confidence in the world that everybody is going to be able to do this. And I'm going to be here to kind of help answer any questions, lend a hand where I can throughout the whole process. So that is what I wanted to cover off on today, the materials for starting seeds in the simplest way possible, and then the method for going about it. Would love to now just open it up to any questions that anybody would have here. Okay, this is brilliant. Thank you, Alicia. Jill, thank you, Jordan. Thank you, Jill. Lisa, awesome, great idea. My pleasure. Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting this over to you. And then we're back to that was easy. All right. Question from Aaron. How many plants per grow light? I have way more than 3 plants. Aaron, I probably have about like, I don't know, 80 or 90 seeds that are like little seed cells in there that are growing at the moment. So the number of plants you're growing, if you're using these 3.5-inch cells, you can do at least 18 of them underneath one grow light. And again, 18 is going to fill up a 10 by 20 tray here. And this is like the perfect size for one of the 2-foot grow lights. And then again, you could get like a little bit selfish and put some around the outside, not sitting on the inside there. That would be, how you'd get to like maybe 24 plants or even 30 plants if you want to really stretch it. And then if you went with a 4-foot grow light, you can actually, if you rather than having it in this direction, you change it to that direction, and you can end up having 3 of these seedlings trays underneath one 4-foot grow light. So with a 4-foot grow light, that would be like at least 60 plants underneath it. And fitting 60 plants into a garden, like that's a big, good sized garden for sure. Okay, so Haley, this is a great question. I only have space to keep seedlings in the basement, not sure of temperatures. If they're growing under grow lights, would they still grow just a bit slower than they would in a warmer spot? So Haley, go ahead and put a thermometer down there and get a feel for the temperature. Write it down into like your notepad in the morning, at lunchtime, in the evening, and then right before you go to bed, so you can see if it fluctuates at all throughout the day. And if it is below 70 Fahrenheit, the only thing that you need to do is just buy a heating mat, which is about $25 to $30. And then you can start your seeds there, and they're going to grow amazingly well if they have that grow light, which of course they would need down there because there wouldn't be any light that would be coming in from any direction. So in that instance, check the temperature. If it's not 70 Fahrenheit, get yourself a heating mat and then just pop your grow light over top of it. I'm going to be sharing over the course of the next couple of weeks here a way, if you go to any big hardware store and you buy a 12-foot long, like 2x2 or 2x4, and you just take it to where they cut the wood and you tell them to cut it into a 36-inch piece, a 32-inch piece, a 32-inch piece, a 12-inch piece, and a 12-inch piece. And you can build a little, I'll actually show you real quick. You can build one of these just like that. I'm not sure if you can see the bottom legs there. And then you just hook in your grow light to the top of that. And that's going to be like $15 worth of wood plus a couple screws. And you can have them cut it all at the store. So you just like walk out of the store with the individual pieces, 36-inch, 32, 32, 12, 12, and then just quickly drill it together. We're not going to zoom in on the woodworking here because it's pretty atrocious. I didn't have them cut it. I cut it myself. Okay, this is brilliant. Love it. Thank you for all the materials that help us. So awesome. My pleasure, Anne-Marie. Love your organization skills. Thank you, Marla. Could you not transplant the others? Okay, great question here. So question, I believe I saw from a couple individuals. Yeah, another one from Jessica. Why you pick only one? You started with 5. So if you want, like, let's take this little kale baby that I have here. This is one that's not growing in mined and soil, so it's not quite as big, a little bit more difficult to see. And if I wanted, I could then pop it out and then rip it into 2. And you're going to, like, hurt the root system a little bit. But at this point, when it's, getting into, 3 weeks, 4 weeks old, the root system is developed. And so it can take a little bit of that trauma. It'll probably like slow down for a week or so. And then you'll have 2 plants in separate pots or in separate parts of your garden that are then growing strong. So absolutely, you could do that. I would put that kind of as like seed starting 102 or 103. If you're not wanting to risk it at all, then just think through, okay, if I want 5 tomato plants, I'm going to dedicate 5 seedling cells for tomato plant, and I'm going to start 25 seeds, 5 for each, and you'd be all good. Question from Karen: when do you start? Or when do we start? So this depends on where you live. Karen, I'd recommend watching the happy hour, reading through my resource on garden planning, because you first want to think through what vegetables do I love to grow. And then once you've thought through that piece, you then need to look at where you live and determine based off the planting charts what you can start to grow. So a lot of us here are in BC. For us, we would Google Vancouver growing zone, and it would then say that, oh, your growing zone is 7A or 7B. And then you'd look up zone 7A planting chart, and all kinds of charts will start to come up and populate. And those will tell you for your zone where you live, what you can be starting in March, in April, and in May. Yeah, question from Chrissy. You told me an app for measuring light amount. What was that? So yes, and this is getting into like, seed starting kind of like, 103 or 201. The app that you can use is called Light Meter, LIGHT METER. And I'd really recommend this to people, especially if you're using either of those 2 lights that I recommended, because if you use either of those 2 lights, you're going to be getting the right light onto your plants. Like I've already taken care of figuring all of that out. And then once you pull this up, you're going to go ahead and put it underneath your light. So I'm going to take the light that I have shining on me, and like, let's say that was my grow light. I would put this just underneath it like this, and it's going to tell me how many lumens are then coming through. And you want that number to be around 5,000 or so. 5,000 to 10,000 is a really great place. If you're below 5,000, you'd want to move your light down so that it's a little bit closer to the seeds. This is where that Monios grow light is really nice, because it has the adjustable cords in there. So you just slide it down, check on your light meter again. Okay, it's now at 6,000, we're good. But then your seeds start to grow and they get like pressed right up against it. And so maybe they're then like sitting at like 11,000, 12,000. Well, now you just pull your light back up a bit and you keep that little bit of space, and you keep on doing that for the next kind of 4 weeks, 6 weeks before we then start hardening them off. Karen, you're so welcome. Appreciate the kind words there. And yeah, like by all means, if anybody needs to start taking off, that's everything that I wanted to go through today. So I will just kind of say thank you so much to everybody. But as I also said, I am happy to hang on the call here for as long as needed. And I would also love to hear from folks, what do you want to learn about? So what would be good topics for future happy hours? Would love to hear that. Jill, I'm going to ask for folks to stay on mute for the moment, just to prevent people from jumping over top of one another, because we still have close to 50 people in the call there. But keep on firing through any questions in there. Candace, I hope that answered the question in terms of how close to keep the cells to the grow light. If we were to zoom out even a layer further, like we need to know what type of grow light we'd be starting with. That's where I want to waste the money buying 6 different grow lights so you don't have to. And if you just buy one of those 2, then you're not going to waste any money. You're going to get a really great grow light. And then at that point, it's just a matter of keeping them using the Light Meter app in that 5,000 to 10,000 lumen range. Perfect. Nithya, I love the idea of tracking it. Brilliant for getting better results every year. This is going to be so fun. I'm doing this test right now, and I have started a set of seeds the way that I used to start seeds before getting into all the worm castings, the lights, etc. And I've now got this exact same set of seeds starting with the method that I've walked you through today. And already it's like night and day difference how much more they're growing by following the exact method that we've walked you through today. So Nithya, to that point, like the method for myself and the way that I've gone about starting seeds, because I've been tracking and keeping just results from different tests that I've been doing, been able to really improve the quality of seedlings that are ultimately coming out of it and into the garden beds. And so as you all start seeds and you start doing your tracking, like, please share with me anything that you're finding out. If something is working, if something's not working, if you're testing something out, like, I would love to learn from all of you as well. From Aaron, thank you. Awesome. You're welcome, Aaron. From Jessica, what was the size of that larger group tray? Looking at your chart, is it right to assume that after 3 weeks, they're ready to go outside? Great question from Jessica there. So the size of that tray, it's called a 1020. That's just kind of like your standard, kind of like seedling tray. If you went to any like nursery or garden shop and you asked them for a 1020 tray, they'd be able to point you in the right direction. And you'll probably want to get one that does not have holes in the bottom, because then any extra water that comes through the soil, it will sit in that tray. It's not going to make a mess, anything along those lines. If you didn't want to buy one of those though, you can literally use like a cookie sheet, and that will get the job done just as well. And then, yeah, great question as well. Looking at your chart, is it right to assume that after 3 weeks, they're ready to go outside? After 3 weeks, that's when we're going to want to start increasing the amount of water that we're giving them. So at that point in time, the root system is starting to grow, get a little bit more developed. And that's usually when I start using the turkey baster to give them a bit more water. But again, you're going to have an eye on this, and you're going to be able to tell, like, okay, they need more than 50 sprays at this point, because the soil is going to be like the roots are going to be sucking up more of that water. So the soil is going to be drying up more quickly. Feel free to ask a follow-up question on that if you would like, Jessica. The second piece to that answer as well is that, like, I've already started my peppers. I started those about like 2 weeks ago because like they take ages to grow. But let me show you. This is a cucumber plant that I think is 3 weeks or 4 weeks old, and like take a look at the root system on it. So it's like this baby here is ready to grow into something bigger, and so after 3 weeks for that, like, we'd be wanting to move that into the garden beds pretty quickly. And that's where we come back to our planting charts. Some of those things like peppers, tomatoes, kale, we want to be starting, kind of around March. But then our cucumbers, our squashes, etc., we'll start those in like kind of early mid-April, so that they only grow for about 3 weeks before getting ready to move them into the beds. And Jessica, yeah, we went through some of that on the garden planning happy hour as well. And all those resources are online. Okay, amazing questions coming through for folks. Like I said, we're past the top of the hour here, so if anybody needs to duck off, totally cool. And like I said, I'll keep on answering questions for as long as needed. Aaron, I'm going to have my kids make that light holder. Amazing, love it, great call. My little brother and I, we made garden boxes for our 2 nieces because they're 5 years old and 3 years old. So I put together a little book for them called My First Garden. Huge fan of getting kids involved with the garden in any way, shape, or form. So having them build the light holder, that sounds perfect. Perfect, Sylvia, absolutely. I can send that through to you. Question from Jill, should the light be off at night? Yeah, you don't want the lights to be on 24/7. You want to kind of simulate the natural environment that they're going to be going into. So, kind of in and around that 12 to 14 hours worth of sunlight. That's going to be, kind of their grow period. And it's really cool to watch them when you turn the lights off, because like they just go into like kind of like recharge mode. And so the leaves, rather than being like out like that, they then go like really, really narrow. And so this is like another huge part of why I'm such a big believer in starting from seeds, because like early on, you start paying so much attention to what's happening and what's growing and what's going on with the plant. So your amount of knowledge for each of your plants really, really begins to increase. And you are welcome. Jill, we're keeping those seedlings alive. Don't you worry. And like I said, like any questions that come up as we get into March, and actually this is a question that I'd love to ask people, is like, is anybody out there interested in like doing a follow-up session in a couple of weeks from now where you actually start your seeds and I'm on the call here just to lend a hand, answer any questions. So basically like a seed starting happy hour where you could actually start your seeds and I can be watching you do it from over the course of the call here. I'd love to know if that would be of interest to anybody to be doing as a happy hour. From Bobby, I missed an important one. Is the garden planning session still available? Yes, it is, Bobby. Shoot me a message, jordan@mindandsoil.com, and I'll send you through the link for it. From Nithya, homemade composting ideas. Yes, I've had a bunch of people that have asked me about doing a composting happy hour. Absolutely is one that we are going to do. It will probably wait and we'll probably save that until later in the season, because that's when we're going to have like a lot of garden, waste that we'd want to then be thinking through how do we compost, versus right now, like nothing's been growing all winter. So there isn't too much to be composting right now. And there's so much to be learning and getting ready for on thinking about our seeds, our soil, etc. Okay. When and how to transfer plants to the greenhouse and then to the garden. Absolutely, Laura. And I am jealous of you having a greenhouse. Yep, feed/fertilizing your garden. We're definitely going to be doing one on how to prep your soil for the season and make sure that it is all good and ready to go. So that's going to be one of the next ones coming up closer to April. And that we could definitely touch on feeding, fertilizing over the course of the season as well. From Marla, I need to know about hardening off, killed some plants last year, and also fertilizing requirements. Both of those are already planned for happy hours over the course of the next couple months. I've got, a really cool way of hardening them off over the course of the couple weeks. I end up using like my DeWalt leaf blower from like 25 feet away to like hit them with some hurricane level winds coming through there. So by the time they get into the beds, they're ready for the big crazy world out there. From Sylvia, problem during seed germination, have mold on top. I use Lee Valley tool. Seed starter has a dome and self-watering. Yeah, so if you have mold, that's probably indicative of there being too much moisture in there. I would be looking into having a little bit less, watering. Given that it is self-watering, I'm not sure if there's a way that you can adjust that. If you can't, then potentially take off the dome, because the dome would be keeping more of that moisture in there. Okay, that's amazing. Jill, you're a great speaker. Oh, thank you. You're the best, Jill. Question from Alicia. Once the plants are sprouted, do you have to put them outside? Nope. I mean, you absolutely could grow things inside. People, like, there's a huge craze for growing cannabis inside in grow tents, all that. And that's a very, very large plant. So absolutely, you'd be able to do that. You'd probably want to stay away from like pumpkins and even like your peas and beans that are going to grow super tall, and focus more on like what are things that are going to be growing in like a 1 foot by 1 foot area, potentially more like herbs and some of the shorter plants out there as well. Okay, I'm hearing a whole bunch of yeses for a seed starting happy hour. Perfect. Yeah, I would love to do all that with you guys. And I think on that one, since I won't be doing as much presenting, like we'll have the method up there, but I'll be able to actually partake in the happy hour and have a cold beverage going while all of you start your seeds. I'll probably start a couple seeds myself as well. Perfect. Worm composter, nice. I love worms, that's for sure. Okay, it looks like we're starting to get to the bottom here. Thanks, Nithya. Appreciate that. So thrilled that your mix made it out to you. That made my day waking up to that message. Thank you. Thank you. So from Jill there, so what exactly should I have in seed right now? So I'm going to answer that. I think Jill, you're based in Squamish here, but I'm not 100% sure, but I'm going to answer it as if I don't know where you are living at all. First thing that you're going to do is you need to reflect for a moment or two, what vegetables do you love to eat? And then you're going to have a list of, these are the 6 or 7 vegetables that I absolutely love. Then you need to look up where you live to find the growing zone. So we're going to say Montreal growing zone, and it's going to say you're in zone 5. Third thing that you're going to do is you're going to look up that zone and planting chart. So zone 5 planting chart, and you'll get a whole bunch of resources that say these are the vegetables in zone 5 that you can start in March, in April, in May. And then you just find the vegetables that you love to grow on that planting chart. And then all of a sudden you see, okay, I can start this in March and that in March. And these 2 or 3 vegetables, I'm going to have to wait until April or even potentially May. This is like we cover off on all of this in the garden planning happy hour, and there's a 3-page workbook on that one that is going to give you that whole plan. So you're going to start with your vegetables and you're going to finish with when you start each one of those vegetables. So if you go through that, then you should have everything that you need regardless of where you live in order to get started. Okay, people are wanting the first garden book too. I'll have to build it out a little bit more and get like copyright rights to a whole bunch of things. So I just ripped a whole bunch of things off of Google and gave it to my nieces there. So I guess you guys will be kind of the first that I'll share this with, but I think it's kind of on my 3-year plan to have a kid's book to come out all around some kind of gardening adventure. So it'll be a little bit beyond just my first garden book that I put together for my nieces that culminated with a pizza party with the vegetables that they grew in their garden. But it's on the horizon, but a few years out. Perfect. Yeah, Jill, if you could send me an email asking me for the link to the garden planning resources, that would be the best way for me not to lose it. And it's just jordan@mindandsoil.com. Karina, exciting on the 3-year plan. Yeah, there's some exciting stuff for this year and definitely some really exciting stuff over the course of the next 3 years. I'm excited where things are going. Perfect. Well, I think we've gotten through most of the questions here. I'll maybe give it 1 or 2 more minutes here to see if there's any other questions that come through. Michelle, I do have an Android. So yeah, I'm not sure if it is available in the, I can't remember the app store for Apple, what it's called, but I'd imagine there'd at least be something very similar if you're not on Android. Aaron, thank you so much. Looking forward to the next session. My pleasure. Oh, there are a lot for Android. Which one was it? Here, let me pull it up there. Here, it's this one here, Lux Meter. There we go. Jill, I'm looking forward to some great gardening as well. Perfect. Well, I think that is all, folks. Thank you all so much for spending your evening here with me. Always a pleasure getting to hang out. And then, like I mentioned, keep your eyes peeled tomorrow morning for an email from me with your seed starting tracker and the recording from our happy hour here. But yeah, thank you all so much and have a great evening. Talk to you all soon.